what is the best option for high quality video and live streaming without breaking the bank. In this video, we'll do a side-by-side comparison of a webcam versus a mirrorless camera for both YouTube videos and for live streaming. For this comparison, we're going to be comparing the Microsoft Lifecam HD 3000 versus the Sony a5100 mirrorless camera. And the first important thing to point out is the massive price difference between these two items. I've chosen one of the cheaper webcams available on the market. It's been out a long time and only costs around $30. I've picked this because realistically, if you want to start making videos or live streaming and you are on a really tight budget, well, you're going to be looking for one of the cheaper options. So that's why I've gone for this choice of webcam. And even though the camera that I've chosen, the Sony a5100, is much more expensive than that, costs around $350 to pick up at the moment, it is still one of the cheaper options when it comes to mirrorless cameras, which are a great choice for both videos and live streaming. So yes, there is a big price difference, but realistically they are a reasonable entry point for whether it's a webcam or if you want to improve your quality and go up to a mirrorless camera. And you can see from this video that you've been watching so far exactly what you can achieve when recording video on the Sony a5100. That is the camera I'm using to record this video here, and you can see the picture quality is very clear. It supports 1080p video up to 60 frames per second. You can get nice smooth footage with a very crisp picture quality. Because it's a mirrorless camera and you can have interchangeable lenses on there, it means that you can achieve a decent depth of field effect, which means you can get blurrier backgrounds if that's what you want to achieve, which does help things look more professional. The only things that I have done here that aren't built in standard to the camera is that I'm using an extra light here, and I'm also using a separate microphone compared to the onboard microphones on the camera. But when we go into the full side-by-side comparison in a minute, I'll use the onboard microphones so you can get a good example of what it sounds like. If you're enjoying this video, please consider subscribing to the channel and dropping a like on the video. And here now is me using the Sony a5100 for the same position that I'm going to be using for the rest of the webcam footage, so you can see what it would look like if you were kind of looking towards your computer rather than away from it, as I was when I was just introducing the video. You can hear the onboard microphones. They're still pretty decent quality, but compared to a dedicated microphone, they're not quite as good. This is going to look considerably better than the webcam that we're going to look at in a minute, but of course it's a lot more expensive, $350 compared to around $30. So it depends where the trade-off is that you want there. Higher quality picture is because it's a 1080p video recording at up to 60 frames per second. This is writing directly to the memory card on the camera, so only really suitable for recording videos of probably up to around 20-25 minutes in length. Not only because the recording limit on the Sony a5100 is 30 minutes, but also because it has a problem with overheating when recording video for too long, which is a really frustrating side effect, but you don't encounter the same problem when using the Sony a5100 for live streaming. But when we look at that in a short while, you will see that the quality does drop off a little bit. But there are downsides and upsides to both options. But you can see with the Sony a5100, you'll get a very nice, clear picture, great for making YouTube videos and recording vlogs. So this is an example now of recording video with the Microsoft Lifecam HD 3000. Now, clearly you can see straight away the quality isn't as good as using the Sony a5100 and recording directly to the memory card. There's a few reasons for that. First of all, this is a cheap webcam, which is only 720p and only supports up to 30 frames per second. Though, to be fair, 30 frames per second should be fine. But because it's running on such a lower bitrate, just recording directly into my computer through software called OBS, compared to recording directly to a memory card on the Sony a5100, the quality is always going to look a lot worse. And then when you can take into consideration just that it has a much smaller, lower quality sensor, the colours aren't going to look as good, it's not going to look as sharp, even if the focus is okay, and it needs a lot of extra light to look even remotely decent. Now at the moment I've got a lot of natural light in the room and I've got a light off to the side which is helping light up the image. If I turn that off for a second, for example, and just rely on the natural light, you will notice that all of a sudden the picture is really uneven in terms of colour balance and white balance, and if I move in and out, I think it will really struggle to kind of keep the shot looking even remotely usable. So I'll turn the light back on again now. I think you need to bear that in mind if you want to use any kind of cheap webcam for recording videos. The quality is simply going to be nowhere near as good as using a mirrorless camera such as the Sony a5100. So if you're in this situation and you want to record videos but you can't afford a camera, I'd look at using the camera on your mobile phone probably first before using a cheap webcam. Of course, where a webcam can come into its own compared to a smartphone is that you can just have it plugged in all the time. You might not want to have, it takes a bit of effort to rig up a phone compared to using a webcam. So I think for recording videos, perhaps the webcam isn't quite right, but especially for live streaming, then it will be a good option. Now here is using the Sony a5100 for live streaming. What we've got here is the camera connected to the computer directly using the USB cable that came with the camera. You can use the Sony a5100 for live streaming or longer videos without hitting that record limit. You'll notice straight away that the quality is nowhere near as good as recording directly to the memory card. The camera can write a lot more information directly to the memory card than it can send down the USB cable. And to be able to use the Sony a5100 as a webcam, you need to use a piece of software called the Sony Imaging Edge Webcam app, which is a tiny little download which then plugs directly into your screen recording software such as OBS. The limitations of this are that the resolution is only 576 by 1024, which is a relatively low resolution. It won't look particularly great for a full screen video such as this, but if you shrank your camera down to just use in the corner for a live stream on Twitch, for example, or for a Zoom call, then the quality is going to look great because you get all the benefits of the camera's system, even if you don't get the highest resolution. So you'll get better colours than the webcam, you'll get better autofocus, you'll get better sharpness, and you'll get that shallow depth of field if required if you have a lens that is capable of that. And it also means that you can change your lens if you have other E-mount lenses that you can use on your Sony a5100. So pretty good overall. It is a shame that you get that lower resolution. Overall, it is a massive improvement for live streaming over the webcam. However, for recording videos, it is clearly significantly worse than using the Sony a5100 and recording directly to the memory card. What we'll do now is we will try to boost that resolution, and that is by using a capture card. A capture card is a piece of hardware that goes from your computer and then from the capture card to your camera so that you can record out of the HDMI port of your camera so that you can get a higher resolution. Now, you can get 4K ones, but as this isn't a 4K camera, I'm just using a 1080p capture card, which captures up to 30 frames per second. So pretty good for the Sony a5100. And a good thing about this is, despite it being another piece of hardware that you have to buy, they only cost these days around $20, whereas a few years ago, the cheapest one you could get was maybe $100 and $120, which obviously is a huge jump in price, especially if you are working on a budget. Now I'm going to swap over to using the capture card using the Sony a5100 so we can see that improvement in quality for live streaming. And this is using the Sony a5100 with the capture card. This quality is significantly better than just using the Sony a5100 with the Imaging Edge webcam app because you get that increased resolution and a better frame rate. You get all the pros that we talked about before with the Sony a5100 as a webcam, such as shallower depth of field, better colours and better focus that we've discussed before, but by using the HDMI output through a webcam and then plugged into recording software such as OBS, you can get that full resolution. If you want to know more about exactly how you set that up, you can check out this video here, which I've made all about it. But it is generally a pretty straightforward process, so definitely a good option for live streaming on a budget if you already have a mirrorless camera such as the Sony a5100 or you are thinking of picking one up. So there we have it. Clearly the Sony a5100 is significantly better, especially when recording videos for YouTube. And it does look better for live streaming as well, but at that higher price point you might consider a cheaper webcam a better option for live streaming, especially if you're only using a small camera in the corner of the picture. The Microsoft Lifecam HD 3000 clearly isn't that higher quality, but at that really cheap price, but it might be worth considering if you are just starting out or if you're on an extremely tight budget. I'll leave links in the description below if you'd like to pick either of these up. But if you've enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing to the channel and dropping a like on the video. But until next time, see ya.